And Lena was talking about the alternative spaces. So there was a question when some young artist put to me, is there any alternative art in India? Or is there alternative art at all? I said yes, of course, there is alternative art, because alternative art is the childhood of mainstream art. If you look at any artist operating in the alternative spaces, Sandhya and Lena know for sure, or all of you know for sure, that they all aspire to become a part of the mainstream galleries. So I would say there is a tendency to write out the academies and the government-owned spaces and extol the so-called alternative spaces like Bhag, Jaga, Samuha, and Shanti. But I would say, again, in a democratic setup like India, democratic country like India, there is still scope for avant garde art, if at all, in academic spaces like this, government-owned spaces, because it is from here that you can protest, you can provoke, and you can deliberate and negotiate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well said. Are there other comments or questions in the back there? Did I see someone else trying to speak up?
I think there's one other thing that we have to think of in a place like India, that is censorship and a kind of cutting of freedom, I think, in academic spaces. And I think Johnny also will be aware of this, that, you know, in a Lalit Kala Academy, perhaps, if we were to bring in, I don't know, sir, you're right here, so you can tell us, but if we were to bring work that was extremely provocative to the public, it would be requested to be removed or not shown at all. So,
the problem is that you are actually giving a print.
Because, you know, I'm citing an example, like 2010 August, I believe, Sopal Seth curated a show here, right here, no, here, upstairs, for Sakshi Gallery. It was called Scratch. So there were a lot of works which were totally new and radically new, and it was like really provoking to the sensibilities of those people who have been seeing works of art like this in the same places. So I don't think that there is a deliberate censorship existing there. Censorship comes from outside, not from here. If you remember, Surendran Nayars and the Bob Birsas were getting censored there in India.
Yes, getting off. Yes.
So I think like it is we can't implicate always the government organizations that they censor. No, there's self-censorship amongst us.
Yeah. Just talking about the censorship, when I was doing research several years ago, I was told that in Baroda there was a problem of this, fundamentalism censorship. That at the MS University, that some student who is showing something which is offensive to some certain religious sense. So then the professor has been suspended.
Yes,
Tajivanika. And so this kind of, it's not only about the unity, and also there's another, censorship, which is
religious fundamentalism.
Could you have work would be offensive? Can you bring some examples?
The works of Chandramohan, who was a student in the printmaking department, a master student in the printmaking department, he showed works which were interpreted by certain members of the public as being offensive to the Hindu religion. And then they got some Christians also in to protest, and therefore he was beaten up, and there was a case filed against him. He was put in jail for a couple of days.
But what did these works look like? Because
what was the imagery that was offensive?
The kind of work he did.
I don't have it. We have one. You can show it. Yeah.
Well, just describe it.
It was the most important image which they had objected to was a woman. A woman who looked like a goddess delivering a demon. That was what they thought was offensive.
And he also does works which are nude actually, the self-portrait
Use
with
the microphone.
his arms stretched out like Christ.
Yes, there's a little bit of there's frontal nudity in that sense.
And lack of crucifix.
Yeah. You know, it's been now about 7 or 8 years after that incident. And there have been a lot of thinking about how it happened, why did it happen, etc. I don't know whether you are in.
To bring up, and this happens a lot with cinema, not particularly in the visual arts but cinema is where it happens to a greater extent. Where as a member of the public, or usually as a member of the censor board, you can say that I feel this defames whatever category I belong to. Now this category can be as diverse as being a Muslim to being a member of the Air Force. So the moment you bring this up, the wheels start moving. And the positions of authority, the institutions of authority in India are extremely wary of anything that is thought to be remotely controversial. And this ranges from public institutions to even an art gallery. So M.F. Hussein's work, and this is really a case in point. The classic, just showed that the country as a whole was unwilling to accept responsibility for the works that this artist was putting up. But there was really no issue. He should just have been allowed to come in, put up his works just because a minority was objecting to it, or a small group of people were objecting to it, does not in any way make them the arbiters of taste. It's just because we have such antiquated laws, and the mechanism, the legal mechanism is so antiquated, that anybody can protest about anything, and it's just going to get pulled off because we don't want to piss anyone off.
Well, pissing people off, of course, is part of the job of the avant-garde. And of course, you know, from my perspective, in the United States, there was an artist named Robert Mapplethorpe, and an artist named Andre Serrano, both of whom pissed off the conservative Republican establishment to the extent that the entire National Endowment for the Arts was essentially shut down by conservative forces, even though in the United States, free speech is guaranteed in the Constitution. And the remedy to someone having an objection to something is supposed to be more free speech. If you don't like something, step up and say why you don't like it, but it doesn't mean we stop saying what we want to say. It just means you have the right to now say what it is you don't like, or say something else. Here it seems to be presumptive to the censorial. If you don't like something, then we'll take it down so that there's no debate or no friction. And maybe, ironically, we've gotten to the issue of why the avant-garde has a hard time existing here, because there's this Victorian issue of politeness here. Oh, we're sorry, we didn't mean to offend you. We didn't mean the blood in my painting. I didn't mean to offend you. I'm sorry if you don't like it. Well, in fact, sometimes art is meant to offend. And as we say in the United States, democracy is very messy. It's not a neat thing. It creates problems. And art, as a function of that democracy, within a free society, often creates problems. It's not the only thing art is to do, but it's one of the things that it can do. And an avant-garde often engages in that, either directly or even accidentally. I don't think Andre Serrano meant to offend people by suspending a crucifix in a jar of urine. His idea wasn't to offend people. It was for him to say, for his idea, Christianity had become debased as a lapsed Catholic. But many people thought he was offensive to the idea of Christianity by conflating the idea of urine and the crucifix. And so a huge, huge fight took place, and for 20 years, funding to artists was essentially eliminated because it empowered the conservative forces within our government to say, you see what artists do, they just do crude, horrible things. We should keep them away, we shouldn't give them any money, we shouldn't give them any power or let their voice be heard. And so, you know, one of the roles of the avant-garde is to continue to raise the voice of free speech and to be a proponent for the fact that art can sometimes say things that no one wants to hear, but need to be said anyway.
You just mentioned that one of the responsibilities of avant-garde art is to raise the voice of free speech. Now, we had this controversy over the late artist M.F. Hussain raising the voice of free speech. So, would you consider his art avant-garde, or it's like How would you describe the whole thing in the light of the discussion that you are having?
Well, part of the role of the art community is to stand up behind artists, even artists whose work you don't like, and to support them when there's an attack from people generally outside the art world. This happened in New York when the former mayor of New York, Rudolph Giuliani, attacked the Brooklyn Museum for showing the work of Fili, the English painter who had a painting of a Madonna that rested on two large pieces of elephant dung. Now, without even seeing that painting, just from hearing about it, this mayor said, no one has the right to throw dung on the sacred image of the Madonna, which of course was not what the artist meant to do, or did, but that created an outrage, and he wanted to shut the entire museum down. The entire museum down because this happened. But the art world stood up and supported the artists, supported the museum. So, you know, the art world has a responsibility to support art, but the key thing is to support the art you hate. To support the ability of artists who do things you can't stand. You think are bad art, are out of bad taste, are offensive to your sensibility, but it still needs to be said. You support free speech with more free speech, and then you can have an avant-garde.
But this was an artist who did not want controversy.
Oh, I know.
He didn't want it.
Very
Just
poor
wanted
artist.
it.
The controversy was thrust upon
It
him.
was thrust upon him.
Yeah.
And then he went to Dubai, and we were a group of artists who were taken there to honor him there. And he would not take that honor, the shield or whatever they carried, publicly, because he said, I don't want to create controversy here.
Yeah.
This is Dubai, it's a difficult place.
It's a great sadness, and I'd hate to end this conversation on the fact that Hussein died outside of this country without having the honor that he should have had for a life of dedicated and terrific contribution as a painter. There are many things that we can regret. We can regret the fact that Taib Mehta died without having a major retrospective. There are many things that we can regret here, sitting here today, but I think we can also say that the notion of the avant-garde may be obsolete, may be too contentious, but the fact of the matter is that artists taking on the responsibility to push ideas ahead and have the freedom to say what it is in their heart is really what all of us need to do to support the continued growth and health of the art world here in India. But thank you all very much for your kind attendance, and we'll see you tomorrow evening. We're going to have another conversation here at 5 o'clock as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Goodbye.